maybe it's a season, maybe it's a trend. I'm not certain, but I am getting more calls, conversations, questions about church finances and church giving than I can recall. It is really a lot of questions going on. Maybe somebody senses something's taking place. I mean, Sam is presenting to our platinum members of Church Answers membership in Bradenton. He's presenting about the possibilities of a recession coming on. Are you going to do that on a call? You're going to do that on a call, not Bradenton.
Right. I'm going to do that on one of our platinum calls. So, you know what? If that kind of stuff interests you, you should check out our platinum group.
Yep, we can put the link in there. We've got 2
Mm-hmm.
openings right now. We don't like for it to go over 30, and well, we don't let it go over 30. So we got a couple of openings right now, and we would love to have you in that one. It's an amazing value for all you get for a relatively low amount. That's not what I was talking about. I'm glad we segued to that. Getting all of these conversations about finances. And it just seems like again and again and again, people either have an issue in their church or they sense that something is coming. Maybe not negative, but they just sense something is changing. Could be the political season. Could be the fact that we don't know which candidate is going to be president. And so as a result, we don't know what the economic policies are. And even if we knew which candidate was going to be president, we may not know what the economic policies are. So we'll be finding that out in good time. But this particular episode is about not making financial mistakes. And we're going to highlight 5 of those. And before we get to the negative mistakes, I want to get to the positive of Upward. I got to tell you the story about Upward. I was recording a series of videos to promote my new book, Where Have All the Church Members Gone? I think I did 4 of them, if I recall. And in the first one, I'm not going to get into all the details, but in the first one, I was just talking about Upward, and it had nothing to do. The videos had nothing to do with Upward, but I was talking about their ministry and how, my goodness, if a church wants an outreach ministry, this is the place to have an outreach ministry, because almost anybody in your community is interested in sports, and the time is now to start planning for 2025. Upward is this incredible organization that helps your church organize and do sports. They are a turnkey organization. They've been around a long time. One of the most incredible outreach ministries that I know. Now you got to start planning for 2025. We may just be in October, but 2025 and your planning is right around the corner. I am going to encourage you, exhort you, plead with you, tell you this is the thing to do. Get in touch with Upward and start making plans for basketball league, soccer league, baseball, softball. I mean, whatever they have, Sam. They have so many different sports leagues that
They do it all.
they do it all.
Baseball, soccer, softball, basketball. They do it all. There you go.
And if you have a gym, you can use that. If you don't have a gym, you can use a parking lot. If you don't have a parking lot, which you should, you can use a field somewhere. It's amazing ministry. Stop complaining about your members being gone for sports and start celebrating that you're bringing the community in for sports. It's a really good opportunity. Love the folks at Upward. All right, Sam, let's talk about 5 financial mistakes in your church. And we preface that with, obviously, do not make these 5 financial mistakes. I'll let you lead off, but I've got some thoughts on some of these as well. But you just go get started on some of these.
Yeah, the first one is something that I encountered at West Bradenton when, goodness, it was 9 years ago now that I got there, and I wanted to set up online giving. And so I asked, how do I do online giving? You know what their answer was?
We don't do it.
We don't have online giving. That was 2015, not 1995, 2015. And I was just like, I think we need to do that. Why wouldn't we, why do we not have online giving? You know what their answer was?
Never done it that way before?
No, they had considered it, but they were fearful of the fees. And they're like, well, they're going to charge us like whatever small percentage, and we just don't want to pay that. And I said, do you know how much you're missing out on?
Yeah.
So we launched online giving. We added an option. That's the key. We added an option, and giving went up immediately, somewhere between 10 and 20%. I forget the exact number, but it was a substantial number because people were now just, they had reoccurring giving.
Mm-hmm.
And when they missed, they still gave. Now, I don't want people to miss, and I don't want people there just so they'll give. But those are two very important factors of spiritual health: is I'm here at church being discipled, and I'm faithfully giving to God. So when we opened up an option, we received more. So when you don't have multiple giving options, you tend to receive less. We also added, so we still pass the plate. We still do that. I still think it's a good idea. There's good ways to do it, there's bad ways to do it. And I understand the arguments on both sides, but we still pass the plate. It's an actual plate, and we challenge our people to give every week. And not only that, we celebrate giving every week as an act of worship, but we have giving boxes. We have ways to mail in your gift. We get $2,000 or $3,000 just mailed in every week. We do online giving. And we're set up for physical assets as well. So if you drop a couple of gold bars in the offering plate, one will need help carrying it, but we can accommodate that. And we have had somebody who came by, they had a collection of gold coins,
Mm.
and they came by. I don't know who it was. The financial team doesn't, I don't know who gives what, but someone did bring by a bag of solid gold coins. That did happen once. And so we were able to receive those assets and then use them for ministry. So we have, if it's an option to give, we try to do it. And the lesson here is, when you have multiple giving options, you tend to get more from people because, well, they have the option to give that way. We have text to give as well. Forgot about that one. If it's out there, we've probably adopted it.
I do remember now, Sam, when I first was giving to Westby, I was mailing in checks. I
Yeah,
had
and see, that
forgotten
was part of the problem. Is you wanted to give. You're not there every week, but you wanted to make sure that you
because I
could
don't live
give.
because I don't live there. Just to be clear.
And yes, and you had to work and remember, and you have to write that down. Oh, I need to give, so um people just tend to forget, and if you don't give them options, well, you're going to be missing out. And and how many people will you make the effort, like, whatever I have to do, I'm going to do this, but not everyone feels that way.
It
uh,
sure is easy just putting it on a loan line giving and knowing that I think it's around the 4th of the month that money is going to be paid to SB. I don't have to think about it. Boom, all done. And then the church I attend more often because I live in the Nashville area, church at Spring Hill, your younger brother's church, they have online giving, and that's theirs comes out the 1st of the month. So yours is around the 4th. That's the 1st, and I don't even have to think about it. All I do is when I see it come through. Not many people will do what I do. I'm a little nerdish about it. I have a budget app, and so I just put it in there, and it goes into my budget that I manage. So pretty neat stuff. Yes, multiple giving options. But the second one, oh, I wish more churches would do this. Have a plan for deferred maintenance. Sam wishes his church had done this before he arrived.
oh man, we're playing catch up now. And to the church's credit, there were years financially where they kind of had to do band-aids just because the money wasn't there. And our church has always had a philosophy of as little debt as possible, if not no debt. So we are risk averse when it comes to the amount of debt that we want to take on.
Or money
Uh,
wise,
what's that?
or money wise, risk averse, but it may be money wise when you're talking about church's money.
Correct, correct. That being said, we still could have set money aside every year, and we didn't. And because of that, we were always in a pinch and always in a bind. And it was always that air conditioning unit went out, or the roof that had a leak, or whatever it is that caused us to go, oh man. And we were forced into the band-aids because of a lack of planning. Well, when you have a plan for deferred maintenance, and particularly when you have a line item in your budget, or like what we do when we have budget, because we budget very conservatively, when we have budget surpluses every year, most of those surpluses go into the building fund so that we can then do projects.
Mm-hmm.
So we have ways, that really two main ways that we take care of deferred maintenance. One, it's a line item in the budget. And so we're planning for this every year, and we have a deferred maintenance schedule, so we know what's going to go out and when. And then two, when we have budget surpluses, and I know not every church has that luxury, but when we have our budget surpluses, typically those funds go to, taking care of the building, which means the operating budget can have more for missions and more for ministry. And
Right.
we can actually do more on the week to week when we're taking those surpluses, taking care of the building, when we have that deferred maintenance set aside. So I know it's a leap, because it's like, well, if we start this, we're going to have to take away from something. And I get the tension there. But in the long run, it actually enables you to do a whole lot more for missions and ministry locally.
And if you do not know this, we've mentioned it in other settings, but if you do not know it, deferred maintenance refers to those items that are going to be a high ticket item if something breaks. I mean, we call them capital assets, we call them things like that. But if your roof leaks and it's a major leak, you're going to have to do something to repair that. If your air conditions go out, you're going to have to do something to replace them if they cannot be repaired. There's just so many things. They're the big ticket items. And what you're talking about with deferred maintenance means you're putting it off. It's not like you're getting out of paying it. You're just putting it off, and it's going to cost you more later than it does now if you're setting it aside, if you have the cash ready. I mean, think about how many organizations that repair a roof or do something else and say, we got the cash, we'll pay you right now. You can probably get some benefit just like that. But the point is, you do have the cash.
Yeah, and that's point number 3, is having ample cash reserves. I remember asking West Bradenton when I got there, what are the reserves like? Like, how much do we have in reserves? You know what the answer was?
We don't have reserves.
0. We don't have any reserves. And I was like, oh man. And we were bringing in just under $1 million at the time, which is a significant amount of money. So we had quite an operating budget. And I was like, we got to get on this. We need to build our reserves. And so not only did we put in a line item for deferred maintenance, we also have a line item for reserves. And over the course of 9 years, we've built them up, which worked in our favor recently because we had a $2.2 million air conditioning project that came up. And that was well beyond the deferred maintenance budget. Let me just put it into what we had for deferred maintenance. But because we had reserves, we could put a chunk of the reserves towards that air conditioning project. And now, after a capital campaign as well, we're going to rebuild our reserves and get back to right where we were.
I like that. I like that. What's an example of a reserve item that is not capital? Because it could be something, I guess, just like a payroll shortfall for if you're really tight for a particular month.
Yeah. When you have, and I recommend about 30%, 20 to 30% of the operating budget be in reserves.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have a $1 million operating budget. I know that's a really big number for a lot of churches, but let's say you have $1 million operating budget, you should have $200,000 to $300,000 in reserves. So let's say you're $10,000 to $20,000 short on your personnel expenses that year for whatever reason. Well, it's not a crisis, right? I mean, you can easily fund that shortfall. And that way you don't have to fire somebody. And you may give yourself 2 or 3 years of, okay, we've got, before we start laying people off, we've got a year or 2 or 3 here to kind of figure it out. And that's what your reserves enable you to do. So it could be anything. It could be the economy is souring, but we still want to give to missions.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to cut missions. So, we're going to give to missions out of our reserves. Personnel expenses, you can do that. Deferred maintenance, you can do that. Capital expenses, you can do that. Really, reserves are there, I mean, for just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
You could fund just about anything. You don't want to get in the habit of, if it's an operating cost, always funding that out of your reserves, because you'll deplete your reserves to nothing over time.
Right.
So you can't do that long term. But it's a good way to kind of catch your breath when you are in crisis or when you're in a downturn.
Exactly. And not that it's necessarily related to churches, but at Church Answers, we function on the reserve model as well. And there are some months that are not as good as other months. And
thank you, July,
for being
absolutely crushing us.
Yes. But thank you, August, for helping us come back.
All these pastors went on vacation, and we love our listeners, we love our clients, we love our customers. Hear me very clearly, because many of you who are listening are among them. But all of you went on vacation and nobody bought anything in July. But we're glad you came back from vacation in August and purchased things.
And made it up some.
We did make it up. Yeah.
So we've got these three do nots. Do not, let me put it this way. These are the things you should do, and don't make the mistakes. You should have a multiple giving option, number one. Number two, you should have deferred maintenance. Number three, in addition to deferred maintenance, you should have some type of cash reserve. Number four, Sam, zero-based budgeting.
This one's hard because if they got it last year, the team members want it this year.
And maybe a little bit more.
And yes, they expect that inflation adjustment in their budget. And it is something that has been a challenge to do at every church that I have pastored, because I got this amount last year. Why do I not get this amount this year? The same amount. It's because you did not spend your budget. You did not show that you needed the money. So we're going to return the budget to the level that you say you need, or the level that you are going to spend, not that you say that you need. So zero-based budgeting is very simple, and you explain this better than I do, but it basically everything resets to zero. So every line item in the budget resets to zero, and you ask yourself the question every year, how do we need to allocate funds with what we plan to do? So the first step is to estimate your revenue. So this is a key part of zero-based budgeting. How much do we think we will bring in? So what we're doing this year is we are giving the same, we're retaining the same budget for the first time in a long time. We're not increasing our budget, even though giving has gone up every single year that I've been at West Bradenton. We want to be very conservative. And so we're just saying we're just going to keep the same budget because we haven't seen enough increases this year to warrant a bigger increase to the budget.
And if you are at a 50% possibility on recession, which is what the economists are saying, if you add up everything, 2025, 50-50 for a recession.
Yeah. And just to be clear, people tend to think that recessions greatly impact churches. They don't. I mean, historically, when the United States has gone through a recession, people still gave roughly the same amount, if not more sometimes. So recessions shouldn't scare you, but we're at an inflection point with charitable giving in the United States because churches are receiving less and less of a percentage of the overall charitable giving. Right. Charitable giving's way up, way up. The nation has generous people. They're just not giving to churches as much. So, your church might be receiving less of a proportion than you expect because of some of the shifts in charitable giving. That being said, I don't think a recession is going to change much unless it's a really, really deep one, which no economist really expects. So the first thing to do is, my point in all of this is properly project your revenue. And once you have that revenue projection, again, you may want to adjust slightly for a small downturn. That's what we're doing at West Bradenton, just to be conservative. Then you can say, okay, how should we spend the revenue? And if you have zero-based budgeting, everything resets to zero. And then you start asking the question, okay, we know what we're bringing in. And so we know what mark to go up to. And how are we going to spend these monies? And that's where people have to say, okay, I plan to do X, Y, Z. And then you have a bit of a political maneuvering over, the worship pastor wants to do this, and then the children's minister wants to do this. And you kind of have to come to terms on what's reasonable. But it's a far better way to do your budgeting than we'll just give everyone a 3% across the board increase. Right. I do not ever recommend doing that. There's no sense in
And you're not talking about pay increase. You're talking about all line items in a budget.
All line items. Yeah. Now, of course, you have to give cost of living increases to your people, based upon inflation. So please pay your people well. But I'm talking about the actual ministry budgets. You don't just throw a percentage out there and give everyone the same thing. They may not be wanting to do the same thing.
So here's what I did with Doug. Coaching Doug, and Doug said, all right, Tom, I want to do a zero-based budget in my church. And I'm trying to remember larger church, so I'm going to say $2 million. I realize we have churches, many of them that are below 200,000, but in this particular case, it's $2 million. And he said, what do I do with a zero-based budget if I just want to do the exercise myself before I start bringing other people in? I said, Doug, go get all of the items that you currently have in your budget and write amounts in about what you think is the best stewardship for the church. Don't look at any past numbers. Don't try to do anything except what you think is best. And if you don't know some numbers, maybe you can go get some fill in, like what's our total personnel cost now. You might be able to get that, but don't cheat. Fill it in. Look at your budget after you've gone through that. You have a blank sheet of paper with just the names of the items. You can add other items if you want to. You can take items off, add them all up, and then compare them to what your budget was and see what the difference is. How does a blank sheet of paper compare to my current budget? That's one way to do a zero-based budget. The blank sheet of paper is your zero-based budget. That's a starting point. So one other thing I want to mention before we get to this last item. If you have people in different ministry areas and they hear that they're not getting more because they didn't spend it this time, you got to be careful that they don't spend it just to get it the next time. Ooh, we got to spend our budget. So every now and then that happens in some areas. Last one, Sam, not making the ask of top donors. Probably the mistake, this is a number thrown out of the air, I don't have the data on it, probably the mistake of 95% of church leaders.
Yeah, I don't have the real number, but that's, if I were to guess, it's 19 out of 20
Yes.
that don't go through this process. Yeah, one of the things that I've done at West Bradenton, I don't know who gives what, so I never see a name with an amount. And I realize there's debate about that, and to what degree should you know? I'm just telling you what I do, and I think it's fair for my church. But what I do know is faithful givers and high capacity givers. So those are the people that I do know. Now, I have no idea to know, hey, this person's just faithful. They may not be in the top 20, but they're very faithful. Or this person could be in the top 5. I don't know that, but I have a list of people that are either faithful or top givers, and they're all kind of mixed together. And that's how I get presented the information. So I get this list of 25 or 50 people, and I just make sure that I stay in contact with them regularly, lunches, whatever, and I'm cast in vision. And when I meet with them, I'm often talking about needs, what they can do, where the church is going. And, there are times when I make an ask. It's not every meeting, of course, that would just get weird. But there are times when I make an ask, and I'm often asking for big things. One of the things that I'll tell people is, and this is a ridiculous number, but it just goes to show, like, if you don't ask for big stuff, you won't get it. So I'll say things like, if somebody, I would never say them, but if somebody gave $25 million and said, this is for the ministry of the church, I would tell them I could have it earmarked in 24 hours. If you gave me $100 million, I could have a plan for that in 24 hours. I want people to know that I have, like, if something substantial came in, hospital kind of money, university kind of money,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a way that I will put that to work. Most pastors don't think like that, unfortunately. And we get stuck in the $5,000 range of, well, we need a new air conditioning unit, and we're $5,000 short. No. You need a much bigger vision. You need to let high capacity people know that if 7, 8, 9 figures came in, which again is ridiculous, I know that, but you would have a way to use it. But you will never get those kinds of funds unless you have a plan, you make the ask, and you tell people.
And by the way, those hospitals, those other religious organizations, those schools, those charitable organizations, they're asking for the funds, and they're getting first in line. And your church member may not even know that you have a need. And now the hospital, the school, whatever the case may be, they get the funds, good for them, but churches are missing out.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted me to rattle off in front of them in the moment, all right, I'm going to give you $25 million. How are you going to use it? I could probably rattle off $25 million worth of things that I want to do at West Bradenton. I really could.
I know you could. It's a big vision. Good stuff, Sam. Tell us about who is our other sponsor.
Yeah, we're certainly grateful for Tyndale. They've been with us a long time, and they do a lot of things well, but one of the things that they just do incredibly well is Bibles. I absolutely love the Bibles that they produce, particularly the New Living Translation. Obviously, that's not the only Bible that they sell, But I love the NLT. I preach from it, read from it, do my devotional in it. And I want to tell you about the Knowing to Living Life Transformation, Life Application Study Bible. This is something that I think everyone should go get. It's you can experience profound transformation as you encounter God through the pages of the Life Application Study Bible. And it tells you how to live things out. You're transformed in Christ. This Bible helps you live out your faith. It's crafted by dedicated scholars and pastors, filled with thousands of study resources that will help increase your understanding so you can experience Scripture's life-changing power. Get over 10,000 notes and resources in this thing. You could use this the rest of your life. So guess what? Do it. Lifeapplication.com. Again, this is the Life Application Study Bible. You can find more about it at lifeapplication.com. Of course, there's a link in the show notes, and we'd love for you to have it. So thank you for tuning in today to Rainer on Leadership. We always love that people listen. So thank you for listening. And if you're on YouTube, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.